Hola amigos. How are you guys? How have you been? You've had a lot of fun yesterday. I hope so. Wait a second. Come on.
Oh yeah, sorry. So how are you guys? How is everything
We
going?
really want to know. I
Yeah.
mean, yesterday you've been with us for such a long time. We've played games. We've learned a lot.
Wait,
So
tell me how was the game yesterday?
yes.
Come on, spam the chats. Come on, yesterday we talked a lot, we shared so much. Come on, now chat is there. Yeah, super. Okay. Okay.
Keep spamming this out.
Yes,
Seriously.
yes. Come on, just let's
Or just
spice it up.
just unmute and
Yeah, you can even
tell us.
unmute
Yeah.
it, right? You can even unmute it. No problem. Okay, anyways, getting positive.
Seems like you guys like really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So not delaying it anymore further. So I'll start with the code. Design is intelligence made visible. And with that, I'd like Navneet to introduce a person to you.
I think we can all agree that illustrations are a huge part of design. I mean, we've worked on something called the our own diary. That is,
The DSG diary.
it's called the journey. I
yeah.
think we'll be sharing that in after the session or something
Yeah.
for you guys to check out.
So-
But what we did there, I mean, what we had most in that were illustrations. Some of them handmade, some of them from illustration libraries and all that. But we cannot deny that design. I mean, have you seen a poster without illustrations? If you have, was it good? I think the best posters have illustrations.
Best posters
And
and UI
even
designs,
apps, yeah.
UI designs, etc. They all have illustrations in them. So while we say illustrations, there is a single person that strikes into our mind.
Yeah.
Like how we reached to that person or how we knew about that person is
It's kind of a weird story. The thing is, when we kind of wanted to, promote illustrations, as in it is such an integral part of design, but yet it seems like there's less people who know about the potentials of working in illustrations and the roles available and all that. So we tried finding someone who was apt enough to, explain that, help us through those steps.
Don't
And
worry.
while we were searching,
Not us, okay? Don't
it's
worry.
not us, don't worry. It is, I mean, while we were searching, we found someone very unique. And it's all because of, the way she caught our eyes is because of the worms. You didn't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It is the worms.
Yeah.
And with that, you'll get to know a lot more about the worm lady. And I present to you Ayesha Rana.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, guys. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. You're audible.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First of all, I'm very glad to be a part of this session and to be able to share my journey and give you insights into my visual journey so far. Yeah, it's great, and I'm very happy that illustration as a topic is being chosen for conferences, especially in India, because I feel like illustration is still new in India, and there are global companies that initially started product illustrations as such, but I feel now things are being taken seriously, and I'm happy. I'm really happy and excited to be here. So, without much delay, I'm going to start my presentation. 1 second. Mm. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Aisha. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so moving on. So today's topic is the science of illustration, but I feel the word science is a very heavy term. And illustration as a process is more of a fun and joyous one. And definitely to be taken seriously, but just the whole process needs to be enjoyed as much, because I feel like it's more fruitful and you're able to come up with a lot of amazing stuff when you're not under pressure, especially when you're doing like personal projects, things like that. So So I hope by the end of my session, we're able to resume the activity we stopped doing it as adults. And I hope you know what that activity is. Uh, so moving on. Uh, so basically, my entire visual journey has been divided by this one incident, one dream in 2012. And what this dream was, this was when I was in my third year undergrad, and I was sleeping, deep sleeping, and my roommate was still up. And in the middle of the night, I, I, s- I sat upright, and I shouted I wanted to be an illustrator. And I woke up with my own voice, and my roommate definitely freaked out. She froze. She thought I was possessed because out of nowhere, she just heard this voice saying that she wants to be an illustrator. And this actually happened. These were the exact same words, the exact incident, and I haven't even changed a single thing. And so that specific journey, I don't know, somehow it did stuck to my mind, stuck to my heart, and it was kind of a game changer for me. So my visual journey is divided into two phases. The first phase is my life before 2012. Um, for as long as I can remember, I have been drawing, and I'm very glad that my parents did facilitate this hobby, or this interest of mine. And as a single child and as a very shy kid, I like drawing was an outlet for me, and I created a world of my own. So drawing helped me escape, uh, from a big crowd. And definitely keep, if you're the only child, you have to sort of entertain yourself. So that kept going on, and that went on to my school life. My school life, I was, you name it, and I was a part of that specific art and craft project. I wasn't a very academically strong student, so I feel like being creative made me more confident, because I made my classes win. Like from nursery to class 12th, I made my class win in every chart competition, every flower arrangement competition, to rangoli competition, to vegetable arrangement, you name it. And I was doing something weird, or something like out of the blue, something very creative. And after 12th, I went into NIFT. That is when I think it got a little more serious for me, because I got like proper education in design, and I understood the concept of design, what shapes I like, and what is a proper form, the function behind it. And the third year of NIFT is when I had that dream. And after that is the second phase of my visual journey, which I'd say would be like more on the professional side. I still draw for myself, but illustration happened very professionally. Post that, after NIFT, I did my masters from IDC, IIT Bombay, and that's when I started taking visuals very, very seriously. Um, I had a lot of seniors as mentors, sort of to look up to, and to sort of follow and ask questions and kind of understand where their visual journey was at that point, and how did they understand visuals. So it was a lot of back and forth of understanding visuals. And so yeah, and from IDC, then I came to Flipkart. Flipkart is where my actual journey of an illustrator started. Flipkart had me as a visual designer for the UI UX front, but I don't know if all of you know, Flipkart has a very big sale, which is called the Big Billion Days. And at that time, they did not have any illustrator. And because they knew that I did kind of illustrations in the past, they said, "Would you be willing to do some illustrations for the product, for the app?" And I was like, "Why not?" That seemed like a perfect opportunity. And being the opportunist that I am, I took forward that project, and my illustrations were all over. And I think that's where the journey of a product illustrator really started. So I illustrated for Flipkart for about for 2 years. Then I worked with Ola on contract. Then I started taking contracts and I started building visual design systems for a lot of startups. So that was the start and it never ended. So when you talk about illustrations, uh, obviously there is software that you have and then you can learn how to draw, but I feel like there are a lot of practices that are very important to carry out drawing or illustration very successfully, and it has worked out for me so far, and I hope it does work out for you as well. So these are practices that I've been doing for years now. So that is why I've written conscious and subconscious, because there are a lot of things that maybe people would do consciously, but it's become a part of my subconscious mind. Uh, the first and foremost, I feel like as any creative person, to be able to see things very closely, very up close, is very, very important. I'll take you to the next slide. So here, if you see, the image on the left hand side has a lot of, it's visually very heavy, right? But when you see the details, you start knowing a lot about the person, whoever's this shelf is. You'll understand that that person will read a lot of books, maybe is into gaming and all of those things. But in the top right, if you see close, it's a very small detail, but if you see closely, you'll see a small toy, like a small figurine of Tintin. These are very small details that you understand about people. It could tell you a lot more about the person that you're looking at, right? Um, this might tell you that the person is a fan of Tintin. It could also tell you maybe the person, while growing up, watched a lot of Tintin cartoon. So these are small details that, on a daily basis, I try to understand about people, about events, or about places. Uh, I am actually a nature lover, and I go for long walks, I go for hiking, and I try to collect the most weirdest of things. If I find something interesting, I'll pick it up, bring it home. I'll kind of study that. I'll see what the journeys are. If I pick up a stem, or if I get a flower, I try to draw it in my sketchbook. These are lychees. These are around 2 or 3 week old lychees at my home. And so whatever these lychees fall, I pick them up. I try to peel them. They look like mini versions of a durian fruit. So I try to study the pattern, the texture, and the shape, and how's the stem like. I try to like cut it, and the image on the right that you see, I try to cut it, and then the nail looks like an open mouth, and the half cut lychees look like angry eyes. So it looks like a very angry. So for example, when I draw an angry character, maybe something like this could help, and then I could like sort of transfer this to that specific illustration. Also, while observing, I feel like I study proportions a lot. When I say proportions, it is a comparative study of different sizes, right? So say for example, the length of my hand, the length of my hand and the length of my foot could be similar, but try to see the comparative difference in the size, right? So while drawing, I know maybe the foot is bigger, so I'll maybe try to draw a bigger foot and maybe like a smaller hand. So these observational skills are very important in the sense that you don't have to keep Googling things again and again. You try to remember things, you try to study things, and then eventually you get that to your illustrations. The second most important thing I feel is sketching. Is trying to scribble everything. I always carry a notebook, or I have like apps where I can note stuff and note ideas that I get for my designs, for my illustrations. If there's anything that I find interesting and I feel like I could convert that into a project, I try to scribble that out so that I don't forget it the next day. Because sometimes you get so many ideas, and after a week you'll you'll remember none because you probably not written them down. So I feel like writing down ideas is very helpful as an illustrator, as a designer. Um, Now, scribbling could be in a part of in the form of drawing or writing, or it could, even be if you the fact that you could even take mental notes. I used to scribble a lot, but now I even take mental notes of drawings. Say for example, if I see a bridge, I try to decode the bridge, and I'll probably like draw a very simple shape in my diary, so at least I'll know what a bridge looks like, or what a dog looks like. And it shortens my process when I you know draw it for a project. So I save time because I've been observing it for like so long and like sort of sketching it out and sort of understanding how different shapes combine to make a dog. So that is very helpful. Scribbling is always helpful. um, these are a few ideas that I had scribbled. Um, like you heard in my introduction, I've been drawing a lot of worms. This was one of the early projects that I had in my mind. This is a personal project, and I was just looking at worms. I was sitting in my garden at my home, and I saw these worms popping out of nowhere. There was one worm that popped out in the bathroom, or there was one worm that was in the garden in a pot. So I felt like worms come out in a specific way, but they come out in different environments. So I was like, why not kind of make a template that the worm stays stationary, and we could maybe change, an environment around it. And those sketches led to this project. So I have this one stable worm in the center, but it's coming out in different environments. So this was a personal project. And I keep practicing illustrations, I keep practicing colors. Colors is something that I feel like one should not be scared of, experimenting with colors, shapes, try to like explore as much as you can. The third most important is to be very, very, very experimental, to explore as much as you can. Being a product illustrator, I feel like one of the most important things why I get projects from startups is because when startups come to me, they want a specific illustration style, for their website or for their app, something very different, something that maybe doesn't exist in the market. So I have to keep my illustration style as flexible as possible. That'll help me come up with a style which is very, very unique, unique to that specific startup. So these are a few examples that I've been working on. The top left one that you can see is more in the sketch form. So the top left and the bottom left are very different, very, very, very different in visual styles. So when you're flexible, it helps you. It makes your job easier to design an illustration system for a startup. It also helps you to come up with different styles for a same composition. Now, if you see on the right, there are these are similar looking illustrations, similar compositions, but if you see how I've drawn the hand is very different. On the top two illustrations, one is very organic, right, and the other one is very, very, very geometric, very 90-degree, very circular. So when you start experimenting, when you start being more flexible, it helps you to come up with different, like very, very, very different styles. The fourth one is personalize. Now, as an illustrator, it's good to have a voice of your own, right? And that can happen when you try to bring out your personality into your illustrations, right? Now, say worms or pop off like 100 colors. Maybe that is my style, or maybe I still haven't figured out my style. But people tell me I have a style, but I don't still believe them because I keep experimenting. I keep doing like different kinds of illustrations. And then another way of making things more personal is, adding that one element in your illustration that people might miss, but if they look closely in your illustration, there could be a moment of, wow, oh, I probably didn't notice that. I'll give you an example. Say if you're drawing a Christmas card, you're drawing a house, you're drawing some snow, maybe you're drawing some like a Christmas tree, but maybe drawing a bird ornament with a muffler on a Christmas tree, that could be like very small element that could just add warmth to your entire illustration. So finding small elements uh, that could personalize your illustration as much, I think that's very, very important. um, this is one of the illustrations that I did for a recent client. Now, if you notice the image on the left and the right, they're both same except for one element, which is the post-it on the right. Now, when I add the post-it, it gives a sense of personal space, right? Uh, so here the card is being delivered. Now, if I get a card at my place, and if I will probably unbox it on my study table, right? Now, the left one might just look like any surface, but the moment I draw that post-it, it makes it more personal. It gives a sense of that personal space. Maybe your user is able to connect to it more, and maybe they feel that, oh, this looks like a study space. This looks like my space. So adding like small, just one element to like add warmth to your illustrations, I feel that just like changes the whole game. The last point that I feel is give it time, right? Now, when I say giving it time, is I'm talking about the growth. Now, it could be the growth in one single illustration that you've had in a day, or it could be your own personal growth. I feel like the illustrations that I did like 10 years back, I don't feel I did a good job back then. If I look at those illustrations, but had I stopped then, I don't think I would have been where I am today. And to be able to achieve, you have to give yourself time. You have to take a step back and see, wait. If you're doing an illustration, you finish an illustration, take a step back, maybe give it a day, give it an evening, take it with like look at it with like fresh eyes the very next day, and you might see something that you might not have noticed the first day. So you sort of give time, improve, work on it. That is only illustration. But I feel like as a visual designer, as an illustrator, for you to give time to yourself and to your career is extremely, extremely important. Like you need to deep dive into it, because every year or every month or even every day you're learning something new. You come up, you see someone's work, and it kind of inspires you in a different way. And you see like two people and you see their projects, and you could just come up with an idea. So I feel like giving yourself time is the most important aspect of being an illustrator. I think like if you do want to take illustration as your if you want to take it ahead professionally or even personally, I'd suggest like keep at it, and I think it'll definitely take you somewhere. I mean, I don't think that the 20-year-old really realized what potential I had as an illustrator. And I feel like I feel very lucky that I did not stop 2 or 3 years back, or like change my profession, just because I felt like there are other professions that were maybe like financially doing better for other people. But this seemed like illustration was something that I felt if I illustrate for say 14 hours, 16 hours, I don't get tired. Like I could go on and on. So I feel like if you genuinely like something and if you want to be doing that thing, I think you shouldn't stop. So the most important aspect of a visual designer, of an illustrator, is to draw for your own self. I do client projects, but in between client projects, I have to draw for myself, because when you're personally drawing for your own self is when you have no added pressure. And I feel like when you have no added pressure is when you get amazing ideas. Amazing ideas, maybe conceptually, or maybe a different style, or maybe you could just make a mistake and then come up with with absolutely new for something new for yourself. And as an illustrator, personal projects are the best, because I feel like projects that are not forced uh, bring out the absolute best in you. So, uh, of course, product illustrator is like one journey of mine, but I also feel like as a visual person, I like to experiment with more mediums, um, and a lot of mediums. When I say mediums, it's not just like one single medium or like two mediums. There are multiple of them. So this is an intro into vermiculture, because I feel the vermiculture is more like an artist. It brings out the artist in me. This is one of the first murals that I did. Uh, because I wanted to explore the product illustration is almost all digital, and I wanted to explore the analog side of me as well. And like, why not paint and do big murals instead? So this was the first mural that I did on my roof back in my hometown. And these are a few other murals that I did. Expanded my visual skill, my painting skills. All the skills that I had acquired so far, kind of put them all together, and try to bring out in murals. So these are a few murals that I did in San Francisco. And I mean, if you visit San Francisco, definitely like you'll be able to see them. So these were a few murals that I did with my illustrations. uh, of course, since I like to paint, and murals are just like big opportunities when I don't paint murals, I'm usually painting big canvases and trying to draw as much worms as I can. uh, I learn a lot of positive and negative space while drawing these, and these are all freehand. So I don't know, it's a different fun for me altogether to be drawing on canvases as well. uh, AR has been a recent interest, but a very interesting interest, I'd say. So this was an illustration that uh, I'm forgetting the software. I think it was Slide AR, and I was trying to experiment with my illustrations in an augmented reality space, and it feels quite interesting, right? Because it brings life to your illustrations. And then again, 3D. I think 3D is the in thing right now. So I've been exploring with just basic shapes, or the left one has been done on Adobe Dimension, and a great software, a simple software. Trying to bring my worms into life, kind of giving them a different dimension. And the right one has been done on Adobe Illustrator. It's trying out their new feature. Kind of cool. It's kind of moving away from the 2D and getting into a 3D. I think 3D just like brings life to all your illustrations. And then of course I try to do a lot of other stuff, which also includes uh, ceramics. I've lately been into pottery and ceramics, and I try to study forms and then shapes, because I feel like illustrating and ceramics has a very common thing, in the sense that you will think of making something, but eventually it'll turn out to be something completely different. And that I enjoy the process. uh, and it's an interesting thing, when you think of something but it turns out to be something else. Maybe it is something that that might help you in newer projects of yours. And yeah, so I think ceramics is one thing that has helped me evolve as an illustrator, indirectly, but in a big way. These are few freeform styles, so I try to understand how clay works, and how to give shapes. So these are shapes that I just go with my intuition, and then I just try to come up with a form that kind of stays intact. So these are a few examples. And of course, I feel like we should keep drawing, because illustrations, I feel, is a lot of practice as well. If you keep drawing, you'll come up with new stuff. You'll come up with something that you might not have imagined, and you'll obviously keep getting better every day. So definitely not stop. And you have me, and you have like other people in the industry. Definitely like reach out. You can always get feedback for whatever you're drawing, or we can always have like a fun collab for drawing. So yeah, I think that's about it from my side. I think we can have a question and answer round, because I feel like uh, since illustration is a very new field in the Indian market right now, a lot of you might have questions, and I'm happy to answer questions that you guys have.
Excuse me. Hello.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So, what kind of software do you use for illustration?
Okay, so when it comes to softwares, I mostly use two softwares. One is Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator is mostly all vector, and it's all vector actually. I mostly do very geometric, very vector illustrations. So Adobe Illustrator, and if I want to draw something freehand, maybe you want to do sketches and then show it to my clients, I do it on Procreate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have more questions? Please feel free to ask me anything.
Hey Aisha, I've got a question. Like, what are the roles that we can expect in this field?
I feel like Throttle Illustrator is a very specific one, but if you're hired as a visual designer, if you're talking about the market, we're talking about the job aspect of it. I feel like iconography, and then sometimes when you're working for companies, there are in-house brands, so could be a part of branding that could involve illustrations. Iconography, I feel, is illustrating, but has a lot of restrictions. What else? I think these are the basic ones that might help you if you're looking for a job that is related to illustrations.
Aisha, I guess there's a question in the comments. If you could read, or should I read it out to you?
I think it'll be great if you could read out to me. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So it's Luar who asked, like, have you ever designed anything in Figma?
No, but I've been meaning to, because I've seen such amazing illustrations being done by people on Figma. Haven't tried, but definitely on it.
I think Arvind has asked how you get inspiration before starting on a project.
So like I mentioned, I always carry my sketchbook, and I keep writing whatever ideas I have. And so this is very helpful when I have to start a new project. I always like refer back. That is one. And a lot of times when I'm drawing worms, I go for hikes almost every weekend. So hiking is a big inspiration for me when I'm drawing worms, because it's just like a nature lover, like a nature kid comes out of me. So that gets very inspiring. Um, a lot of times it gets very difficult to kind of inspire myself or like motivate myself when I'm doing client projects. But depends. A lot of times talking to people in the same industry and meeting people in the same field, you come up with ideas. I think that motivates me as well. So people, I feel, are the biggest form of inspiration, at least for me, that works out the best. Does that answer your question? I think Arvind asked this question. I'm not sure.
Yes, I think there is another question too. What made you attracted to worms?
So this goes back years, and since I've never been scared of insects, and worms is something that when you're a kid, you're just like sitting idle, not doing anything, because you don't have any responsibilities, you're not worried. And especially during rainy season, when it used to be very gloomy, these worms used to pop out of nowhere. They used to be like these big surprise elements for me, and that really really intrigued me. And those are like happy moments for me when like worms used to pop out of nowhere. So there was never a hate for worms. And since 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 those gloomy days to now, I think every time, and I'm big into gardening also. So not scared of worms, just love how they are. I love, how much they do for us. We don't even we very undervalue these small organisms. Uh, but I just love the work that they do for us.
I think there are a few more questions waiting for us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
No.
okay. So Mithun has actually asked, the worms you brought to life are so cute. Are there any other main characters you have considered for your illustrations?
Thanks. Uh, Worms, I think, is the current focus. You never know, the worms could like be caterpillars, and the caterpillars could be butterflies. So these worms could evolve into anything. You never know. But for now, I think worms have been my current focus. But I don't want to limit myself, with the character that I have in my visual language. But definitely, like, I'm always open to drawing new stuff, because I feel like as a product illustrator, I can't just focus on worms. I have to focus on humans. I have to focus on product. Maybe focus on animals, or a completely different character altogether. Uh, so yeah, I think I'm pretty open to other things as well. But I've just been experimenting with worms as of now.
That's great. That's quite great. Okay, so Nihal has asked another question. How can
Sure.
we turn our illustrations from a hobby to a career? So, what is the path that molds us from a hobby to actually thinking, actually focusing on a career? How do we transit to that?
I think one thing that I realized personally, that I wanted to take illustration, like I wanted to make illustrations from hobby to a more personal, like a career choice, is I feel like I can illustrate for hours without getting tired. Like I can sit on my computer screen drawing for 8 to 10 hours, and I will not get tired. And I felt like if I could, use that to doing something professionally, and professional life requires, like, 9 to 5 job requires a lot of hours into working, and I felt like if as work I can do something that I really enjoy and I can do it for hours, it's like, why not? So that was one of the reasons. But I think, like, to take it as a career, you have to at least start getting obsessed with visuals, because I don't think in words, like I think in visuals. Even when I look at words, I look at words as visuals. um, so it's been a long practice, but I feel like if you want to take it as a career, maybe don't limit yourself with any software. I see, like, an individual artist getting into 2D, getting into 3D, getting into motion design, and like actually giving life to your illustrations by animating them. So I think if you do all of that, there is never going to be any shortage of work. So I think just like keep at it, keep doing it, and I think you'll just like ace it someday.
That's okay. So we have another question now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we have another question now, and this question is actually, I guess, quite relative to different fields. It's
Okay.
related to a creative block, sometimes that we feel. So Gautam is asking, you ever get a creative block? So how do you overcome them?
Right. I think creative block is like any designer or any creative person's nightmare. Uh, I sketch. I sketch as much as I can. Even if you say creative block, I try to draw whatever comes to my mind. And also, I think so. My husband is also a designer, and just talking to him opens up my creative block, because creative block usually happens is when you're staring at one specific thing, and you can't think further, right? So that's the creative block. But I feel like if you explain your project to someone and you talk to them, or maybe like you tell them about what you've been planning for your project. And people come up with like different ideas. You might not look at a project in the same way as a second person or a third person. So getting ideas, talking to other people definitely helps me open my creative block.
Okay, so we have another question now.
Yeah.
Sheetal asking how to start illustrating in a beginner's aspect.
Okay. I'll give you my example because I feel like I can give you the the best personal advice. Um, how I started illustrating was I used to draw and draw as much. We had assignments initially in college where we had to do like live study, and then have like we had to complete like 50 drawing sketches every day. But those are assignments. But apart from assignments, I used to draw a lot in notebooks, and I used to call them. No, I used to call them. It's called doodling, right? You take a notebook and you draw whatever comes to your mind, regardless of how it is going to turn out to be. And I think once you start doing that, you start understanding compositions eventually, right? And maybe like start understanding people's work, or maybe like start decoding people's work. As to, if you see an illustration, you see, okay, what must be the person thinking while they were illustrating this, or how did they come up with a concept like that? So starting sketching and decoding other people's work, and not afraid to try. I think those are the first three things that you should do if you really want to like start illustrating, and just do it. As in, don't be scared of how your illustration might turn out to be, because eventually you will be good at it. But you have to keep at it. You have to keep growing. You don't have to stop.
Great. So that was inspiring. So we have another question, a bit more technical one.
Okay.
So Hirene is asking, Procreate has brought a lot of new features for 3D painting. So can we use Procreate for 3D modeling, or is it just for painting?
I have used it only on one or two products, but I have seen a lot of people. Right now, they have, I think, only specified number of models, as far as I know. And but I think there is also a feature where you could save your Cinema 4D files and transfer it on Procreate, and then kind of paint on your 3D models. So I think there's an option, but I'm not sure. You might have to look into that. But Procreate for now, within Procreate, there is only a specified number of models. I haven't tried much in that. But I think it's definitely a great software. I think this is going to be a game changer.
All right. Okay, so I guess we are having another question from Ashwin. Since you are into multiple stuffs, would you rather choose to be the master of one or the master of all?
I think master of none, because master of all, I think you really have to like focus.
No, it is like master of one. Master of
Oh,
one.
master of one. Oh, I thought master of
Yes.
none. Sorry, I read that wrong. Master of one or master of all. I like to do multiple things, so I'd say master of all. I don't usually like focusing on one thing. That's the reason I'd been experimenting with a lot of different mediums. So I think since I like exploring, I'd like to explore options and try to be an expert in multiple things.
Okay, great. So another question from Madeline. Do you prefer doing your illustrations digitally or use a sketchbook?
I feel like drawing on I started drawing on a sketchbook, and I used to really like drawing on sketchbooks. But over a period of time, most of my work professionally gets done on digital, and I don't get a lot of time to do illustrations on sketchbook. But I feel like if I have time, I'd prefer a sketchbook. But I enjoy both. I enjoy drawing on sketchbook and digitally, and so yeah.
So thank you so much, Aisha. I think that was such a wonderful session, and you answered quite a lot of replies. And
Thanks.
how did you find the session, Aisha?
I feel like this session is just a very basic introduction into, the life of an illustrator, like my life. And once you start getting into illustrations more seriously, more professionally, I think there's a lot of things more to learn. So I think this is just the beginner talk. But I think if there is any one of you who wants to maybe wants to get seriously into it, can definitely get in contact with me. We can discuss projects and I can give you feedback. So all those things can happen, but I think this is just the beginner uh, talk, because I want people, whoever's interested in drawing or illustrations, I feel like you should start drawing almost every day, because I think that is a really really good start. So this was just to motivate people to at least start drawing, and eventually, yes, illustrations for sure.
Aisha, can I ask you another one?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, ask me. We have like 15 minutes more, so you can ask me any
Yeah.
number of questions.
Okay, so basically, I find that when I'm doing illustrations, I kind of tend to stick on to one style. I kind of have some trouble varying my style.
Right.
So would that be an issue? Like, how do you manage to get different styles to each project, or have a uniqueness to each thing rather than just the whole thing?
Right. So I think if I see, like, if I look at a lot of illustrators, uh, there are people who have very specific styles and they've aced that specific style, and they get client work accordingly, right? As an illustrator, clients will come you for two different kinds of work. One work will be to come up with a different style altogether, or if they like your style, they will come to you only for that specific style, right? So it depends upon what kind of projects you want to be taking in future. Say for example, if you say, I am a freelance product illustrator, right? So I have like multiple clients from different startups coming to me for a different style. So for me to be able to come up with a style is my thing, right? But so with your question, how do you want to like come up with more styles, or the just the pros and cons of having one style?
Actually, it's both. I mean, I want to vary my style. I find it hard. So how do you change that? And in case, I mean, if I do have a style, what would be the pros and cons? I wish you would say. I mean,
Um,
tell us.
okay, so let's start with the first question. What is your first question again?
Like, how do you kind of get to varying your styles? I mean,
Got it.
yeah.
Got it. So I think if you try different softwares, say for example, if you do something on Illustrator, that gets a very vector, clean lines, like vector style, right? But if you're illustrating on Photoshop, it'll give you like different textures, or like a different textured line, or a different shape altogether. So sometimes not limiting yourself to just one software, and maybe experimenting with like multiple softwares, that could help you. Or how I also personally try to do stuff is that I try to look at people who have really different distinct styles. I try to decode their work, right? That what is it that makes their work different from, say, Illustrator A? Like, how is Illustrator A's work different from Illustrator B's work? It could be it could be it could be just different shapes. It could be a combination of, you know like fill and stroke. It could be just stroke. It could be just like a monochromatic theme, so it could depend upon colors. So I think when you start experimenting with uh, multiple combinations with these design elements, I think you could come up with sort of different styles. It's all an experimentation process. So do not limit yourself to just like one thing. You can always maybe get like feedback from other people. That is one way. But don't limit yourself. I think just keep trying, because for me initially I used to be drawing like just geometric, right? But over a period of time, I have tried to experiment with like more like organic lines, right? So it all happens with experimentations. Like experimenting is like the first step of coming up with a new style. So that is my answer to your first question. What is the second question?
Like you said, like the pros and cons of sticking to one style. I think basically, yeah.
I don't necessarily see cons here. Pros in the sense like you will get different kind of client projects then. If you have one style, uh, people could come you for just that specific style, and if you kind of own that style, amazing. People recognize you for that one specific style. Uh, Say for example, if you have a work on a billboard, or if you have your illustration style in an app, so people will be able to recognize that, oh, this is this person's work. But when I do like multiple styles, people might not recognize really as, this is an Aisharana illustration style, right? So I get different client work. I get clients like, clients from startups. They want a different style together. So I don't see like major pros and cons. It's just a different kind of projects that you'll end up getting. That's all.
Okay, so basically stay in a midway, yeah. Yeah, I think I get that. There's one more thing I'd like to ask you, if that's okay.
Me?
There's, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, that's like one last thing I'd like to ask you. I mean, you've covered how we can kind of build a career out of this, but what I want to ask is, how do you like get your designs out there? How do you get it noticed? I mean, how do you get to a portfolio? I mean, from that to getting people to see that and recognize you in that, and all that.
Your voice broke. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I audible now?
I think it's my internet. Yes, you're audible. Sorry, your voice broke in between. I completely lost track of your question.
Okay. If I'm audible now, can I continue?
Yes, you're audible.
So like my question was like you've gone through these stages of like going from doing this as a hobby to actually getting it in your career and following that. But how do you kind of get your artwork noticed? How do you get it to people and all that?
Okay. Uh, I think to be able to put your work out there for everyone to sort of notice you, that you exist, that your illustrations exist, is first definitely posting on whatever platforms that you feel are important to you. I feel like people have been posting stuff on Instagram, on Behance, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and one way is definitely networking. I feel like we're 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 at a stage where uh, social media has brought all of us so close that one DM or one message, and you can always talk to someone, right? So just talking and like showing people your work and maybe getting feedback from them, that is one thing. Posting your work in different platforms is another thing. uh, Maybe like attending talks. Like there used to be conferences, right? We used to like meet people and show them what your work. So I think one is like be confident, be upfront, and let people know that you exist. That is very, very important, whether you do it physically or virtually on multiple platforms. So I think don't limit yourself to just one thing. Uh, Put it on like multiple, have a website, right? Your website could have links to your LinkedIn or your Twitter or your Instagram, and maybe like post stuff on those platforms also. So it's all a web, right? And like one discovery could lead to another. So maybe like don't limit your options is what I'd say.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Aisha.
Aisharana.
Yeah, I mean, you've covered everything from the basics to, I mean, how you kind of grew up in illustrations and how you slowly transitioned through that, how you discovered perspectives, and how you kind of found out that observation is the best skill for an artist,
Right.
and all that, like how you got into worms, and it was all really interesting to know. And as some kind of, I mean, I do illustrations, so I kind of, I relate to you a lot, and I wish that someday I could probably become like you. And yeah,
Right.
thank you so much, Aisha. I think you've inspired a lot of other illustrators here. There are there are a lot here, and yeah.
I'm glad, and please feel free to like reach out to me anywhere. Uh, my email ID or any social media platform, anywhere. And I'm happy to help whoever wants to get into illustrations. Seriously, more professionally, maybe.
Thank you, Aisha, for such an opportunity, and thank you for coming over here today and
Thank
spending
you.
your time and enlightening us with your journey and the pros and cons of everything, and explaining to us and taking your time. So really, thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Sure. So yeah, so guys, coming back to you guys again. So how do you guys feel after this such a wonderful session? Come on, let's hear.
Put it in
Let's
the chat.
spam again. Let's spam the chats again. Great. So not dealing it any further, but I'm gonna, before I introduce this person, I'm gonna say what this person was to us. So basically, he inspired many people, and he's like we all are his fans basically. So it won't be great if I explain, but because he was the one who introduced me to that person, he shared me his Twitter handle and said, Salman, you have to follow this guy. So yeah, so it'll be better, and it's the most rightful thing to do for Navneet Bennett to introduce that person.
I think we can all agree that, okay, I can just say that Figma is one of my favorite platforms to design in. And I kind of, it was a steady transition from coming from Illustrator to Figma and understanding that it was so collaborative and all that. And then I come to Twitter.
But I want to pause one thing. I introduced him to Twitter, okay? Figma.
Okay, yeah. I got into Figma solely because of Salman. And slowly, when I got into Twitter, I got into all these design communities, and all those different people. I kind of met different people, and one of the really coolest people I found on Twitter, who is from Figma, is Miguel Cardona. He is one of the most incredible people who knew how to use Figma. He's the design advocate at Figma. He strives for bringing Figma to educators and students, and he's inspired us so with all the different ways he uses Figma. All the tips and tricks he posts and all that, and I'm literally nervous right here knowing that he's there in the crowd, and yeah, I like to introduce him to all of you.
So yeah, guys, before we get into the session, I like you guys to completely focus in the session for the next an hour, so that you guys get better insights than yesterday from us. So yeah, welcome, Miggy.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I start? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We're on? Okay, cool. Thanks for that introduction. I really appreciate that. I go online, and my goal is just to empower other people to design and make things. So hopefully this session is going to be worthwhile. Let me begin by sharing my screen. Sorry, I don't normally use Google Meet, so it's a little bit different for me. Let me get the screen sharing going. Okay, we get a window. Here's my window. Hello, UXTopia. How are y'all doing? Okay, so can I just get a confirmation? Let's see. Do you see my correct window? Yes, you see my correct window. Perfect. All right, so what I'm actually going to have everybody do I like to start off my presentations with a little bit of a collaborative experience. One thing that we do here at Figma is we like to design for delight. And in designing for delight, in these times where, we can't all be together, we like to create a little bit of connection. So I'm going to do so with our product FigJam. So we're just going to spend, a couple minutes in here getting to know each other. I'm going to do what is known as a open session. So I'm going to click start here, and I'm going to start this open session. And what this means is that even if you don't have a Figma account, you can join me here in this document, and this is where we're going to kick things off. So I'm going to share this in the chat. I believe everybody can see that, and I'll get confirmation when I start to see people join in this document. So this is going to be the same thing that I'm sharing. All right, I'm seeing y'all show, and this is great. So you're going to be able to, you can actually go ahead and click on my icon, and you'll also have the ability to follow me. This part is going to be interactive, so please, if you have the ability to, please join this document with me, and I'm going to walk you through a few things here. So first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Miggy. Actually, I was given a very lovely introduction, and I appreciate that. But Miggy, I'm a designer advocate. I want to just highlight that. So like design advocate would mean I advocate for design, but designer advocate means that like I advocate for designers. And I think that the little distinction there is important in that, I advocate for educators, I advocate for designers, I advocate for students, both within the company and externally. So, I'm here to help you all. I'm here to help you on your journey to becoming, excellent UX designers. A little bit about me, I'm joining Figma from the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT. RIT is actually a global university with campuses in Dubai and Croatia, also here in Rochester, New York, where I'm joining from. And there I was an assistant professor where I taught new media design, so UX interaction design classes, and like a little bit of programming, sometimes web programming. So you can actually find me on Twitter at Miggy. You can click on these links. These are fully clickable. On Instagram at InstaMiggy, and you can also view my community profile at Figma, where I share a number of files that you can duplicate and kind of learn from. So if you're new to Figma, you're just getting started out, check out my community profile. I have a bunch of little files that I used to teach my students and kind of get acclimated and learn some pretty good design basics. All right, let's head over. So one thing that I want to emphasize today is that if you are a student, in a structured learning environment, Figma is entirely free. To get that free benefit, basically what you do is you create an educational team. So when you sign up for Figma, you can verify your status, and then you create an education team, and then you can get started with templates. So I can't, get through this presentation without highlighting the reason that I'm here is that, Figma is free for students and educators, a very powerful design tool that we want to make accessible to everyone. All right, so a little bit about FigJam. So right now we are currently in Figma's second product, FigJam. It's a whiteboarding tool, very relevant to those in UX and interested in UX. I'm actually going to show you some really cool UX templates that we put together. But as I mentioned before, I like to connect with you all. So I'm going to show you some of the ways that you can connect with others in FigJam. So first I'm going to kick it off with cursor chat. Anybody can say anything that they want to say by hitting the / key. If you can't hit the / key, right click and choose cursor chat. So if you right click and choose cursor chat, you could say something. So you can tell me hello, and I could tell y'all hello. And then we're here, talking to each other. This is great. So next up, let's talk about stamps. I'm going to press the E key. The E key brings up this little kind of like stamp wheel and emoji wheel. And what that allows us to do is we can actually drop stamps. So I could hit little stamps in here. If I click and hold it, right, makes it a little bit larger. Now, these are all things that we intentionally designed and brought into the product. When the product first started out, it was just a bunch of dots and some stickies, but we wanted to think about how do we really kind of create engagement. And I can see that y'all are engaged with me right now, and I can feel this energy, so this is great. Also, if you press the E key, you can also emote. I see some of you were already emoting there, so I can drop in those heart-shaped eyes, and we can kind of have fun with each other. Lastly, we have the high five. So here I'm going to focus in on that high five. If you press and hold the H key, right, what we can do is we can high five. All right. So like if you come up over here, we can have a little bit of a high five session going on. And we're able to be together in the same space, and this is great. If you notice, we have 72, 73 people in this file, and I couldn't be more excited. All right, so now that we started, just give me like a heads up. I'd like to know whether or not if you Figma. right? So do you Figma, and what I would like you to do is just stamp, right? So I'm gonna press the E key, I'm gonna click my little stamp icon, and I'm gonna say I'm a Figma design enthusiast. Otherwise, why would I even be here if I didn't absolutely, you know, like love the product and what it stands for and how we can kind of create. So if you press the E key and drop a little stamp, let me know, do you Figma? If you're brand new, that's totally cool. I just need this to get a sense of when I begin to demo Figma, right, to know where everyone is at. So please, I encourage you, drop a stamp right here on this bar. Are y'all able to drop stamps? I'm not seeing stamps. Let's see. Can I get a little bit more stamps? Let's get a few more stamps going. All right, so let me know where you're at. So I'm going to press the E key and drop another stamp just so y'all can see. So drop stamps, let me know how and if you can Figma. Down here too, FigJam. FigJam is this product that we're currently in right now. And, you know, have you ever even heard about it? If you're brand new to FigJam, let me know. And if you're a FigJam enthusiast, you know, go ahead and give me that face. Just drop it on over here. That's great. And if you click and hold, you can make it larger. And even if you want to, you're a control freak and you really like to make it much bigger, you can just select that object and make it a little bit bigger right there. And I'm really appreciating the energy that y'all are bringing here today. Next up, what I would like to do, these are cards, and these are going to become relevant to the conversation in a little bit. These are cards that are made in Figma using auto layout. Right? And we're going to be talking about auto layout. We're going to be talking about creating components. So these are components that are made in Figma using auto layout that are then brought into FigJam to use as icebreakers, right? And this is actually part of a template that I put together, so you can use this icebreaker template. But what we're going to do, I have some instructions up here, and let's see how many cards. If I have enough cards for everybody, I'm going to duplicate some cards, and let's just duplicate some cards because I know there's about 77, 78, 79 people in this document, which is amazing. I'm going to walk you through how to create this card, so nobody touch this card. I'm going to use it real quick. All right, so this card right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to customize it. First, I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to double click onto this card and you'll see this little 4 squares up at the top. So if you want, you could take a look at my screen and see how I'm demoing this, right? There's these 4 little diamonds up here at the top. And what I can do is I can change that color to a different color. So I'm going to make that yellow. I can make it red. Those are variants. And once again, I'll show you how this is put together in Figma, but I want you to experience, you know, how the design works in the first place. If you want to add a photo, double click. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click until I see this little icon up here at the top, and then I can swap that out for a photo. So I'm going to go to my documents. I'm going to go to my assets. I'm going to find my profile photos. I'm going to find a little photo here to share with you all, and I'm going to put it right there. Right? So I'm able to add in a photo. I could drop in my name. I am Miggy from Figgy, and my pronouns are he, him, not he, him, because then, you know, I'd be butter. All right, so what's your institution/company, right? I'm at Figma, but I also taught at RIT. All right, what is your field research focus? I'm going to say interaction design. And then what is my favorite offline activity? I love arts and illustration and just making all kinds of things, Now, the cool thing about these cards is you notice I'm pressing enter and they're expanding that field because it's using auto layout. The object is kind of wrapping around it and it's a little bit more responsive to the text. And that is a concept that we're going to be covering today. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see, I would like you all to create some cards. So like I said, this is an interactive activity. So begin to make your cards. So double click, right? Add it in and fill it out. All right, cool. So we got Alan over here. Alan Fencer gets it, right? He understood the assignment. I don't know if y'all know that. He understood the assignment. I just learned that the other day, that whole saying, like, you know, did you understand the assignment? I understood the assignment. All right, so we have plenty of cards here. I'm looking to see y'all represent for yourself. So we got Vlad over here. We got Gotham. Once again, if you don't know how to set it up, you can follow the instructions up here at the top. But, you know, I just like to see who it is that I'm working with, who's here in the audience, and so then this way we can work together. All right, I will show y'all one more time if you need a hand. I'm going to grab one more of these components. Once again, if you need an extra one, you can just go ahead and you can option drag it, right? And you have a copy. So you have a copy here. And I'm going to bring this over. Once again, if you need to move around the document, just hold down the spacebar key. You can move it around. And at this point, too, I will show you If you want to access all the shortcuts that FigJam has to offer, right? This isn't a secret, but it's kind of a secret because not that many people know about it. I'm going to hit Command / right? Or if you know, your keyboard doesn't support /, hit Command P, and then you can type in a search, right? You can enact functions here. I'm going to type in keyboard shortcuts, and when I do that, you'll see a bunch of keyboard shortcuts along the bottom. So if you want to know all the keyboard shortcuts that FigJam has to offer, you want to become like a master, you know, facilitator of workshops, you can go here and you can kind of choose all these right here. So let's see how you all are doing. All right, what's up, Shabin, Ashwarya, Joel, Nicole, Mithun, how you doing? Isha, how you doing? Ria, how you doing? All right, cool. One other thing that I want to highlight here is that we got a bunch of stickers over here, right? I have these little chat bubbles. So if you see this little chat bubble, you can go ahead, you can type whatever you want into it. You can duplicate it. You can make copies of it. You can also change the color of them, right? And then I can just drop my little emoji here, and it's like I'm saying something, right? So I'm going to bring that to the front, and I can say, you know, hello. So if you want to leave something a little bit more permanent on the canvas, you can go ahead and drop some of these. Now, where these are located are actually in the libraries. So if you go over here, you can open up the libraries, and then in here you can find a whole swath of stickers made by artists that we like brought in here. So the one thing that I want to identify is that this whole FigJam experience, you know, everything in here is intentional. You know, we thought about the experience, we thought about how we wanted people to collaborate, and we kind of put these together. So even the little interactions down here, the delightful toolbar, all of this is important. So let's see. One last thing I wanted to highlight in here, because this is UXTopia, where would we be without UX process? So much of UX process can actually take place in FigJam. So what I'm going to do here, if you look at my screen, I'm going to demo how templates can be inserted. So I'm going to show y'all 2 templates that I have available in the Figma community right here, diagramming basics. So let's say you're working through a user flow. I'm going to insert that template, and that template's going to just drop itself right into this document. It's actually over here on the side because it saw that, you know, y'all were cropping over there. It was like, I need my alone time. But we have our diagramming basics in FigJam. And when you come here, you can actually see it walks through, you know, how to build up one of those diagrams. Let's drop another template in here. And what I'm going to do is say research. And I have user research activities in FigJam. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in that other template. So here I have a whole template set up with the opportunity to build a persona. We have empathy mapping. We have our journey mapping, along with instructions on how to build this out, right? So if you're a UX researcher, if you're beginning that process of a product, or you're really just defining a problem that you're going to be solving for your design, we have these templates here. And then those templates can be accessed down here in this little template bar. I'm going to take a screenshot just so y'all can see what the template icon looks like. I'm going to make that really big. Look, as we're going, it's just like just making that available. Let's crop this down. All right, cool. Let's crop it, right? And these are templates. So, you know, like I said, you know, you're in a UX, you're working on that process. You want a template, it's here. All right, cool. Let's see. I'll give another shout out. Sarah, hi, nice to meet you. Arun, hey, how's it going? So feel free to throw little stickers and emojis on your cards. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to highlight 2 other parts in this document, so you're free to kind of hang out in this space. If you have questions that you want to share with me, add the questions down here, right? So if I go down here to my little question area, so I'm going to be doing demos and stuff, and I'm going to come back here to this point later. So if you have questions, drop it here. What you do is you just drop a sticky, and then put in a question and be like, why this? I don't know, why this? Or you could even say, you know, why that? And here you can even drop a color, and I will know, you know, who you are. There you go. So begin to ask questions, and I will come back to that and fill that out. Also, too, we have these new things called widgets. Widgets are pretty sweet. They allow you, here, hold on one quick second. Let me just make sure my camera settings are set, because sometimes they reset my camera settings. So I'm just going to go in here in the Chrome and say camera, and let's see, camera settings. All right, cool. I have the right camera already set up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click photo booth. It's going to open up, you know, this little photo here. And then y'all see my green screen in this photo though, but that's okay. It's a little bit behind the curtain. So here we go. Here's me. There's Lauren. Lauren works with me at Figma. She's here supporting me today. I appreciate you, Lauren. All right, cool. So yeah, so y'all could drop little photos, right? Now these are widgets, so they will actually follow with the file. So if you copy paste that into a file, if you want to find other widgets, there's a bunch here. If you go widgets and camera, you'll be able to find that here. So this widget was actually designed and developed by a designer here at Figma, Kian. And I think he did a fantastic job. So feel free, drop some selfies, put them in the selfie wall, populate this space. All you have to do is click the little red button on the photo booth, and you know, we'd love to see you. All right, cool. So make sure you populate the question wall, make sure you populate the selfie wall, and if you feel like doodling, down here we have a doodle wall. I've already made an adorable little like Shiba Inu that's saying hello. And like I said, if you can't draw, right, let's say you draw like a coffee mug, if you really want to make it good, just put a face on it and have it introduce itself. That's a little trick that I learned. All right, so if you feel like you can't draw something and then make it introduce itself. And I guarantee it'll be fantastic. So as you all are doing here, like, by the way, you know, just drop your selfies in. Don't be shy. Have a good time. Click the little red button, and then you can have the selfie. It'll populate in that space. You will need to have a camera configured to your computer, though. All right. You don't need to duplicate them. Man, there's a lot of these cameras. Here, I'm going to delete some of the extra ones. We don't need all the extra ones. But yeah, go ahead and do so and see if that works. Okay, so you can join this Figma file. This Figma file, because we have so many of y'all here today, I'm going to leave it as view only, but you all will be able to watch as I'm doing my demo. This is what we're here for today. And, you know, like I said, you can remain in this FigJam document if you want, you know, fill out the doodle wall, take some selfies, ask some questions. But, you know, now I'm going to begin the demo portion of Figma. All right, cool. So once again, hello UXTopia. My name is Miggy. I have another introduction card here just in case you forgot who I was. So I have a couple different pages in this file. And by the way, all you need to do to join, right? I have this join this Figma file, and then you'll click it. You will be joining as a viewer though. So you will be joining as a viewer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be over here, and I'm going to be walking through a few things. So just to kind of kick it off, I'm going to show y'all some prototypes that I put together. So these are prototypes that I had together for a presentation on interactive components. I'm going to show you just a little of what's possible, and then we're going to dig into some of the meat and potatoes of Figma. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. So you can watch my screen and see what I'm doing. Hopefully it shares well. Let's see. All right, cool. It's doing okay. But if you're in the file, you should be able to hit the prototype button to view these prototypes. So I have a number of different prototypes. And what these are is whenever I'm demoing Figma, right? Whenever I'm like learning or teaching prototyping, one thing that I like to do is I like to make a bunch of small experiments, right? When you learn something like UX, right, it's easy to get caught up in like, you know, making everything perfect and, you know, designing all your screens before you go to prototyping. But the real answer is, you know, you need to make small experiments before you begin to start. You know, you have to know, you know, what is possible, so then that way you can kind of like innovate and create in that space. So I have just like a bunch of different examples here. This one is using interactive components. Interactive components is a new feature in Figma. It's really unique in the way that it allows you to create these sort of complex interactions on the stage at the same time, right? So I can actually just pop those all back out, and I'll be walking you through this as well. This is an infinity symbol. Let's see, is it playing through? Oh, I don't know if it's playing right now, but I'll go through and fix that. So here I have these fun little dots. So once again, using interactive components. And we're going to walk through some very basic things. So here, this is going to be my intro. Once again, I'm just going to take a look and see where everybody landed. I think y'all just put stickers everywhere. Y'all are just all over the place, but that's okay. We're going to get right into Figma, and I'm going to walk you through some very, very basic things. So the first thing, if you're brand new to Figma, that I want anybody to know is that anytime you need to look anything up, or if you want, or if you're confused, if you're looking for an action, right, hit Command P, and you'll get this little menu that pops up here at the top, right? So if I hit Command P, I get this little menu up here at the top, and that menu, I can find all the keyboard shortcuts, just like I did in FigJam. So I'm going to say keyboard shortcuts. So here we have a bunch of keyboard shortcuts. I have the essential ones, right? Show, hide UI, pick color, quick actions, you know, but everything that you want to figure out. So when I first started learning Figma, when I first started, you know, my first time in Figma, I mean, this was a few years ago, so there were like less functions, but I found this bar and it really helped me understand what I could and couldn't do in Figma. So I think that this keyboard shortcuts bar is really important. I pull it up all the time just to remind myself and say, hey, can I do that? You know, such things like select inverse, so select everything except the current object that you have selected, you know, deep select if you want to select an object inside of an object, right? There's all of these different options here, and sometimes I forget about them and then I remind myself. So this keyboard shortcut bar, once again, my fast way to bring it up is hit Command P or Command / and type in keyboard shortcuts. And even when I type it out, I can see the shortcut for the keyboard shortcuts. So for me, it's Control-Shift ? Depending on the computer that you have, the shortcut may change. So it'll let you know the correct one for your operating system and for your device. So when I pull that up, here's all my keyboard shortcuts. Now, the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to start simple, but we're going to elevate pretty fast. So we're going to go all the way through this. So once again, yeah, here, let's just drop the link so you can just join that link. And I can see there's 11 of y'all in here. You know, click on, you know, my icon up here. So if you click on the Miggy from Figgy icon, you should be able to follow me in this document as I'm doing things. I'm not granting edit permissions just because there's so many people, and you know, it can get a little bit overwhelming. And so y'all are great to follow along. And just to make you, I'm going to make y'all disappear from my screen. So I'm going to hit Command / and I'm going to type in multiplayer cursors. And unfortunately, I made y'all go away. But here, hold on, I'll bring you back. You know, so you can also use cursor chat here. So I'm going to say hello. I think y'all can do it back. Can y'all cursor chat back? Cool. See, so like I can see that y'all are in here. This is great. Hi there. Okay, so hopefully you're having fun. I'm seeing the cursors move around. It feels like fun. So let's go through. I'm going to turn off multiplayer for now, just so we can kind of work through some things. So the first thing in Figma that you have to kind of get used to are the frames. So I'm going to go over here. You'll see frame. Frame is the F key. So I'm going to draw out a frame. Now, when I select my frame, if I want to rename it, right? So right now my frame is just called frame 1. If I want to give it a better name, I could go ahead, I could double click, and then I could just be like Miggy's frame, right? So that's actually a new feature. It's only been out for about a month or so, but you can actually just right click or double click right there and change that frame name. And then when I make I can make another one as well by option dragging, right? Option drag. So another shortcut key that's one of my favorites. Let's say if you need to create a lot of frames really fast, I'm going to option drag this over to the right, and then I'm going to press Command D or Control D if you're on a Windows machines, and that'll just create, you know, all of the frames and just go on in perpetuity and kind of move over, but that's just way too many frames. So let's go back, and on this frame, if you want to select a very specific device or frame type, when you select the frame, you move over here. So the way that Figma works is there's the canvas. Over on the left, you have the like layer tree of everything that's on your canvas. So over here, I could see my pages right up here. I have my frames, I have my layers. I have here my canvas, everything that's like the visual representation of what's on the canvas. And on the right, I have properties that I can change, right? So properties of this frame would be like the frame's color, right? I can change that color. And then I can also change various, its sizes as well. So I'm gonna click on frame, and I can choose an iPhone 13 Pro Max, and it'll give me the correct viewport size. So this is the correct viewport size. If you've ever created a frame in Illustrator and you chose mobile, it's not actually giving you the viewport size, it's giving you the physical dimensions. But whenever you're designing for on screen, you always want to make sure you're designing to viewport dimensions, and that'll make sure that your font sizes are the correct size and that your pixel values are correct when you go to design in CSS or like, you know, for an iPhone or Android. So you always want to design to the viewport viewport size. So here we have a bunch of different viewports. I can go down to an iPhone 8. I could choose Android. You'll even see if you keep scrolling all the way down, we even have things for Twitter posts, Twitter headers, Facebook posts, and things like that. So to begin, I'm just going to choose, let's say, an iPhone 13 Pro. So here we go. I have my device and I'm ready to go. So when you're designing things, you can put things in and outside of frames, but things will typically nest inside of a frame. So next up, I'm going to use shapes. So here we have a number of different shapes. The ones that UX designers are using the most is rectangles. What do they say? You know, you draw rectangles all day. So here I can draw a rectangle. And like I mentioned before, all of the different properties are over here on the right. So I can change its fill, I could change its width, I could change its height, and then even here I can begin to apply rounded corners. If I want to have a little bit more control over the rounded corners, there's this little object right here, independent corners, and then that allows me to set independent corners. So like, let's say if I just want to, you know, increase this one, right? So I just have that one corner right there. I can even just pull them independently right there in the UI. Another shape that is really important is the ellipse. By the way, a circle is a circle, but an ellipse is a circle in perspective. So all ellipses are just circles in perspective. But the really cool thing about the circle tool that is unique to Figma, we have here the arc tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over here, and you can see I can open that up, right? And all of these properties are fully manipulatable. You can change them. So what I can do here is I can sweep that, and I can open that, and I can close it. And I can change the, let's see, I can change the angle of rotation, and watch this. I can actually open out the middle. So like, let's say if you're designing a health or fitness app and, you know, you got these little rings, you have these little process rings right here, you can fully control how that is being manipulated, then even just round out those corners, you know, and that's kind of fun. So I can copy paste that, and then I can bring that down. Oops, let me copy paste that. And oops, let's see, copy paste. And bring it down. There we go. And then I can have like a, let's say, different color for that, you know, and I have my little rings, right? So let's say, you know, I'm a designer at Apple, you know, now my job is done. It's great. So cool. All right, I'm gonna just hop over here. I'm gonna see if there's any questions before I continue. We're gonna start digging a little bit deeper. Remember, if you have any other questions, just feel free, hop over here, drop in a sticky. The stickies, use the S key and then click, right? And then if you already have a sticky, you want to create another sticky, Command Enter or Control Return, and then you can just create many more stickies, right? So feel free to ask questions. Like I said, I'll be referring back to that question area. And let's go. So here we go. Miggy's frame. We got a couple shapes here, right? We're just getting started. We're learning the basics of Figma. A couple other cool things. Polygon tool. This is actually one of my favorite tools, the Polygon tool, because I can actually, you know, you can go here and if you want to, you can make a heptagon, right? So if it has 7 sides, it's called a heptagon. Who knew? Today I learned. So you can make an octagon, right? You can make a pentagon, and you can make all of those different sizes that you need to. And what's cool about this, and I'm going to kind of jump the gun a little bit and go right into images. What's really cool about these shapes is that any shape can be created, and you can use an image to fill that shape without having to, let's say, create a mask. So right now I'm using the star tool, right? Star tool is kind of cool because I can change the count of the points. I could change the ratio of the points, and I can even change the radius right here. So let's say I had all of these shapes, and, you know, let's say I'm making a design, I'm making like a fun children's app, and I want to drop in, you know, like a really cool graphic into this fun shape. So let's go ahead. I'm going to give this one a radius as well. Let's make it a little bit softer, right? Let's take this one. I'm going to give it a radius. Let's make it a little bit softer. And what we're going to do, Command-Shift-K, right? And like I said, if you're not a shortcut person, that's totally okay. I can hit Command-P and then type in, you know, images, right? When I type in images, it's going to give me this image tool. It's going to let me place an image. I already have a whole folder full of fur babies. I already have a whole folder full of fur babies. Already have a whole folder. You can say that 5 times fast. So fur baby photos, I have a number of fur baby photos in here. So these are fur babies. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6 fur babies. I'm going to put the emphasis on the last part, fur babies. And you'll see that now I have these images and they want some place to go, right? So what I can do is I can click, 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 right? Any shape can just use images as a fill. That's the way that images work in Figma, is that images are a fill. So if I was to create, let's say, another shape over here, right? So I have this polygon and I want to transfer the shape of this cat into that triangle, right? If you come over here, you'll see fill, and then you'll see image. And then just to the left of it, you can select it. When you select it, it'll turn blue. I'm going to hit Command C. I'm going to select that triangle and Command V, and it pastes that over, right? And you can actually layer these up. So let's say if I had this cat, right? And trust me, we're going to get to all the components and other stuff, but this is the important bit right here. I'm going to add another fill. So you can layer these fills, and let's say I want that to be red. Let's say I make it 100%. And let's say, you know, if you're familiar with Photoshop, you know, blend modes. So here I can actually go in and I can stylize this to be how I want it to be, right? So I can choose hue, I can choose color, and I can begin to kind of manipulate how that is looking, right? So I can actually set this to like black, and I can set that to saturation, and it'll make it grayscale. So then I can add yet again another fill. And let's choose a linear gradient. And here I can choose like one color to another color. And I can make that 100%. And so now we have that blue to red. And we could change the blend mode. So we could say screen. Let's make it 100%. And we could change that from like screen to overlay to difference. Ooh, that's creepy. Soft light. And what that gives us the ability to is kind of create this, like, you know, this this kind of like cool style that we can apply to other things. So I think I liked screen. And now let's say if I just want these two fills, right? So I'm going to select those two. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to bring it over to this adorable puppy over here, and I'm going to hit paste. And now you can see that the linear gradient has been applied. So both of these are now stacked on top of that first fill. And then if I want to make this a little bit, you know, cute for my app, I can add in a stroke and, you know, like a nice little color here. And I could actually put that on the outside, and hopefully, you know, this is fun for you all, right? So there we go. So I have that style. And let's once again, you know, let's change that linear gradient. Let's put it that way to this way, you know. And by the way, this is really ugly, but it's beautiful at the same time. I'm going to copy both of those and just bring it over here. Let's say this one. Now, if you want to change how the images are mapped inside of that, right, I can go to image, and there's a whole bar here, right? I could change the exposure, I could change the contrast. And what I'm going to do is I can actually crop it a little bit differently. So let's say if I want to bring this little corgi over here and make that corgi part of the main attraction, I can easily set that crop value, right? So go here, let's set that all over again. So I go here, click on the image, right? Here's the image. I change the way that the image is filling the shape. So I'm going to choose a crop, and then here I can even adjust a little bit. Let's do that contrast. I can move it up there, right? And now it's applied to that image, right? And then now that we have this style, right, I can create I can click on the 4 dots, and I can create this as a repeatable style. So I'm going to create new color style. I'm going to call it, you know, corgi fun. And if I create yet again another shape, I can go to my previously existed style and apply corgi fun, right? So I can, you know, create a triangle and then also apply corgi fun. So hopefully y'all are having fun. I'm having fun with this, right? So I have my little corgi fun style. It's probably the most useless style in all of Figma, but you know what? It's the cutest. All right. So let's get into components, right? We're here to talk about UI and buttons and dig in just a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is just kind of explain to you the way that components work. So I'm going to do so by creating, let's just create like a half of a thing, right? Let's see, boom, 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 right? So I just created, you know, like some points, right? So I'm using the pen tool. So the pen tool is right up here. So this is the pen tool. If you press P, right? There's the pencil. If you press P, right, you can draw vectors the same way that you would draw them in Illustrator. So if I hit P and I click, 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 right, I can start to make an arrow. I can actually add another point to that arrow, which is unique to Figma. We have this thing called vector networks. If you try to do that in Illustrator, Illustrator would yell at you, unless it's in the newer version. I don't know. I've been using Figma all this time. So if I was to, once again, draw this out, right, I can add this point and then add another point, all right, and they're all connected. So I can even like connect, you know, like another point there and another point there. And, you know, you can see it's all connected. So this is known as vector networks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a vector object, right? So I have my arrow here, and I'm going to create it as a component, right? So right here it says vector1. So what I did to create it as a component, if you look up here, there's create component. If you right click, there's create component. If I hit option command K, it creates it as a component. So components are very special in Figma, and what they are reusable elements that you can use again and again. So when you're working in a team, when you're working on a design system is actually going to have a number of components that comprise it. They're reusable elements. So when I make this a component, oops, that's the wrong thing. There we go. When I make this into a component, and I call this, you know, arrow, you'll actually see, all right, we got these edges here. So I'm going to hold down the command key to expand that out a little bit, right? And I'm not trying to be perfect yet. You know, in later exercises, I'll try to be a little more precise. But here we have this arrow. And actually, let me select this. You can go into the stroke and actually round out those corners, right? So there's advanced options in the stroke. So I double selected it, I selected this object, and I went and I created those things. So here I have a component. Now, the way that components work, let me hit command key and expand the frames around my component, right? So this is our object. Let's make that nice and even. So let's see, that's 324 tall and 432 wide. Right? So this is a main component, right? Now I'm going to copy and paste a version of it, and let's duplicate that, right? So I'm going to hold down the option key. If you're on Windows, it's Alt. I'm going to hold down the option key, right? And then we have 1, 2, 3. Now this main arrow controls the other ones, right? So the way that the component works is that this is the main component and these are all instances. Now I can change certain properties of the instances. So here I can go red, here I could change this one to like blue, and then this one I could change another one of the properties. I could change the stroke size. Let's give it another stroke. Let's make that like a linear gradient. You know, let's give it a little bit of a shine here, and let's increase that value, right? So once again, this is still the main component that kind of controls the other ones. So I'm allowed to have, and here, let's just give this a little bit of direction here. I'm going to say, you know, main components, right? Let's make that a little bit bigger. Boom, 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 boom. Main component, right? And then here we have our instances. Right, and those instances have overrides, right? So this main component basically outlines like the basic shape of this thing and what it should be, but then these instances have property overrides. Now let's say if I wanted to take this instance back to its original form, I can right click on it, and I can also push my overrides to my main component. So if I did that, then they all look like this, right? So let me undo that. But what I can do is can come over here and I can actually reset all the overrides. But if I double click and I go inside, then I can choose, you know, which overrides that I want to override or undo, right? So if I want to reset stroke, it'll go back to its original version, right? So this is the main component. These are the instances. That's the basic concept. In design systems, we use this to make card components. We use this to make button components that kind of like will go inside of other components. And the whole point here is that you don't have to constantly remake the same thing over and over again, but then you can still kind of change certain aspects of it. So here, let's make another component. As we begin to start to work our way towards prototyping, what I'm going to do is create a text box, and I'm going to call this button. This is like the classic example for auto layout. Actually, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking auto layout. So I'm going to bring it down to my auto layout section. So here we have this button, right? It's a text layer. First thing that I want y'all to know too is that there's 3 different types of text layers, right? There's one that is auto width, which will just kind of like continue to fill like a width. So if I were to say, you know, button, 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 right? That's just going to fill a width. But then there's a different type of text field, which is going to be auto height, which has a set width that as you type in more, it'll fill the height, right? And then lastly, what we do have here is a fixed width and height. So it'll assign to that width, but then you'll notice that the box itself doesn't get any larger, right? And this is really important to think about when you're using auto layout and how your text behaves. So is your text growing in height? Is your text growing in width? Or do you have a fixed width and height that defines how your text flows? Because we want our text to kind of engage with our other elements. So in the same way that we had these cards over here, right? I'm going to hop in. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab a card. Let's see. I'm going to grab my card, right? So when I grab my card, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to bring that over here to our UXTopia space, right? And this is actually, you know, this is all put together. And if I double click, you'll see that this text, right? When I double click on this, this expands, right? And that's because it's set to auto height. So the width is set to a given point, but then it expands. So that's really important to think about when you're working with auto layout. I'm going to keep that here, and let's now work with our button. So to create anything as an auto layout, I'm going to press Shift A, right? When I press Shift A, that creates it as an auto layout frame. If we look over here, the auto layout frame icon looks a little something like this. Oh, hey, look at that. I just designed the auto layout frame right there, right? The auto layout frame icon looks a little something like that, and that's what auto layout is. So when I do that to this button, I have these features over here that allow certain properties to be changed, right? So I have this padding value, right, which is kind of the one that's most important for the button. So when I up this padding value, let's say I set it to a value of like, let's say 20, and I come down here and add a fill, and I add a blue background. I can also change the text in there to white. So I can select this frame, I can round out those corners. Let's round it out to about a value of, let's say 8. Now what's cool about the auto layout is because this is set to auto width, as I type, right, the layout expands to my text, right? So this is expandable. And what's really cool is that this auto layout frame, I can just convert this to a component, right? So this is now a component. So this is my button component, right? And now when I duplicate it, you know, if I make the change here, they all change, but then I can override the text. So I can say, you know, button 1, right? Let's say we're making a navigation. I could say home. I could say, you know, resume. I can duplicate this and say portfolio. So I have all 3 of these options. So I have 1, 2, 3. Next, right? So each of these are their own auto layout frames, but what I want to do is I want to use them together, right? I want to make this an auto layout navigation, right? So let me actually add another one. Let's say about me. And I can select them all, and I'm going to press Shift A, right? Once again, that puts them into an auto layout frame. So what we have here is a bunch of auto layout objects inside of another auto layout frame, and I'm going to name this navigation. And the one really cool thing about this, and this is getting better all the time, is if I go to inspect, I can actually see right over here how the auto layout is kind of creating how it's kind of using Flexbox in CSS. So you can see that there's actually a direct correlation to, you know, the way that this behaves and CSS code. So here I now have these all laid out, and what I can do is I can actually change the spacing, right? So auto layout now gives me the ability to change those spacers, and then I can actually make this vertical or horizontal. So I can choose on the fly how I want that to behave. So what I'm going to do is, let's say if I want this navigation to, I'm going to iterate upon it, right? So I'm going to duplicate it, I'm going to iterate upon it. One of the great things about Figma is just the ability to just kind of create all of this stuff and kind of like iterate and develop with it, right? So here I'm going to take this navigation, and let's say I want, instead for this to behave, if I drag this out, right, and I want them all to fill this space, right, that's going to make it behave a little bit more differently. So what I can do is here I can select this button component and actually all of the other ones, and instead I can tell them to fill container. So right now what I'm doing is I'm changing the behavior, right? So when you're working with auto layout, you're basically thinking about how objects resize. So here auto layout, and then here resizing. So when I expand this, right, this is now a fixed width, but now all of my elements inside of here, I'm going to tell them to fill the container. So when I change that container width, they're all going to follow suit, right? And if I wanted to, like, let's say even change their kind of like internal values, right? I can change it at the main component, or I can change it here and basically say, okay, no longer hugging contents, right? It's no longer like expanding to fill the text as it grows. Instead, we're going to fill that container. And I can also set it to be horizontal, right? So here, same thing, no longer hug contents, but fill container. Here, no longer hug contents, but fill container. And then here, no longer hug contents, but fill container. And there we go. So now if I expand and close this, they grow and they fill. But once again, if I want to change how all of this behaves, I can actually go back to my original button component. Let's say I want to change my font to Inter, or even, let's say, Merriweather. I could change that, and you can see how that's then applied here. And then if I want to apply overrides, right, I can come in here and I could change those overrides, say Inter, bold, right? And then we have that. So what's cool about this is that, you know, you have your one reusable element, but then you have the ability to kind of like override and take that up and change that. All right, cool. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any questions here in the questions board. Is there any questions about auto layout that anybody has? Feel free to throw it into the messages. Here, let me turn on multiplayer cursor to see if y'all are still in here. All right, any questions? Any questions? All right, if there's no questions, I'm just going to continue. Let's move it on. Hopefully y'all are learning something. Let me see. Are y'all learning something? All right, cool. So I'm seeing some yeses. All right, cool. Yeah, all right, this is great. I'm so happy. Hopefully I'll be able to watch this again later. I'm trying to go at the speed where you'll be able to watch this again later and kind of say, all right, cool, I learned something right there. So this is great. Let me turn off the multiplayer cursors once again. Sorry, bye-bye. Actually, I'll leave it on. Let me see. Let's see if it doesn't get too bonkers. So we talked a little bit about auto layout. Let's make something a little bit better with auto layout using what we learned from like our last kind of like little lessons above. So I'm going to make a card, right? And then we're going to take this card and we're going to make it a little bit more auto layouty. So here, I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. You know, like I have this card here, I'm going to bring over into the demo area. So I have this card. This is like a little like Netflix card, right? So it has like play, it has all these different options. And the way that this, when it gets resized, right, the resizing elements are treated in such a way that you see that the image, you know, it scales to fit the space without distorting, right? We have the logo of the show in the middle. You know, here we have these elements are like flush to the left, and then these elements are flush to the right, but it expands and kind of changes, right? So let's say we want to make a card. And like I said, you know, this is kind of like utilizing some of those kind of features, but let's make a responsive card. I'm going to walk you through all of the concepts that kind of lie within it. So first, I'm going to create a rectangle. This would be for our images. So I'm just going to give that like a little, like just going to bring it into the world. There we go. I got a little rectangle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some text. Let's say that this text is going to be a header for the card. So I'm going to say card header. And let's give those some properties. So I'm going to choose enter, let's choose bold, let's make that, let's see, 44, right? That looks pretty good. That's a pretty good card header. And then let's have, some like body text for this card. So let's say this is body text for the card. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Let's say, no more than like 21, or let's see, 21. Oops. Make sure it's all selected. There we go, 21. And we're going to make this text auto height because this text is going to grow to fill the space, right? So we have like our basic elements of our card. Let's just put in, body text for the card, right? Like, let's just imagine how that's going to behave. So have all these elements here, and then let's also begin to think about I'm trying to think what else can we include here. Let's make it a little bit more difficult. Let's add in another bit of text over here on the right? So let's just say, detail. And then this will actually be over here on the right. I'm going to make my life a little bit more difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this into a card. So I'm just going to flush this out and say, okay, that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? And let's actually begin to put this together using auto layout. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to have this card header and this detail be next to each other, right? So I'm going to press Shift A. So now they're their own kind of auto layout frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this, like header. Now, what I'm going to do is this one, I want it to be a very specific width, right? And this one I want to be a very specific width, but I want them to behave a little bit different. This one I want to grow from the right? And let's bring that down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this one set to fill container and this one set to fill container. And we'll see how they behave. And if at any point you want to get a sense of like how the card is being put together, you can also hit Command Y and you'll be able to see some of those details. All right, cool. So trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. So here what we're going to be able to do is I'm going to set this container. Right now it's fixed width, and that's okay. We're going to change that up in just a little bit. So in here, this one is set to fixed width, and let's make sure that they're padding, right? This little invisible padding here is kind of keeping them apart from each other. And we're going to set this to fixed width for now. And once again, this should be to fill container, and this one should be fill container. And this one is also going to be the height. So when I fill this out, its height is going to go down, and you'll see it kind of fill that space. And when this one goes, its height is going to go down, and it's going to fill that space. Okay? So we have this one pretty much set, and its width is determined by the width of that container. Right? So then next up, we're going to add this element here. We're going to bring them together. So I'm going to press Shift A. So now they're going to be together. And then let's bring this element and bring this element together and press Shift A. So now they're all together, but they're not perfect, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, this is our main frame here. And we want this to kind of react to it. So I'm going to select this object to also fill container. So now it's filling the container that we have. Right? Now I'm going to select this object. I'm going to tell that to fill container. So once again, this is now filling that container. Then this object, I'm going to set that to fill container, right? And then now that is filling this container. And then same thing for this last guy right here. I'm going to set that to fill container. And then they're now filling that container. Okay, so basically what we have here is we have one main kind of like container that contains it all. And then they're all kind of filling up that space. And then we also have some spacing in between. So I can say that this is a value of 20. And I'm going to use, let's make that 24. Let's make our spacing values divisible by 8. So in here we have this other auto layout, and let's also set that to 24. Or we can tighten that up a little bit and go 16. So now the frame as a whole, let's give it a fill. Let's make it white. And then here we have that padding value. right? And I can expand that padding value, and then now our card is starting to come to light, right? But once again, everything is still kind of dependent on that width, right? And then even in here, let's say if I determine that, you know, I want this to be a little bit more, right? I can set this to fill container, and then I can set this to fixed width, and this one is always going to be just a little bit smaller, but this is still going to fill it. So there we go. Okay, so we're basically making this responsive card that we're going to then use in our prototypes in just a little bit. All right, cool. So I have my text. Let's make our text Merryweather. Just make, you know, readable body card text. And then at any given point in time too, once again, I could change these values. So I could set that to, oops, not 246, but I could set that outside card to 24. I can select the whole frame. I can round out those corners. I can select this object. I can round out those corners. And if I want to, I can take this object and now create it as a component. So this is now a component. So this is, you know, Miggy's card component. So now that this is a card component, I can make versions of it. And once again, I can load in images. So I can just drop in one of those fur baby photos that I have here. And I can say, you know, puppy. And I can even change, you know, these values here. So I can reduce that and say, you know, doggo. That doesn't need to be bold. And then here I can even change some of the values for my body text. So like, let's say if I want to set my line height to be 24, let's set our line height to be 32, you know, and even here too, if I want to expand the fill. So this is an instance of my main component, and I can still change all of those values, right? I can even throw in like a little stroke, and there we go. So I have my adorable card. And then once again, I can go ahead here, and if I want to add in, change the photo up, I now have, you know, and kitty, right? So now we have multiple ones, and I can even change this text. And then if I want to, you know, I can make that like that. Likewise, if you want to add additional elements, like let's say, for instance, you know, I wanted to have some, you know, like little buttons in here too. I wanted to like expand, you know, this auto layout that I have. Excuse me. Let's say I go over, where did I go? Oh, did I throw out my Netflix one? I did throw it out. Let's make an icon. So I'm going to press F. Let's say 24, about 24. I'm going to hop in here. I'm going to turn on my layout grid. I'm going to create a heart icon. Let's bring down that stroke. So we're going to make little hearts. Look at that. I already made a heart. And then I'm going to move this down and move this down. And then we have an adorable heart icon. I bet you've never seen an heart icon put together so fast. Let's bring this down. Boom. And let's make it red. Boom. And let's make it a component, because we're all about the components here. Let's hide that fill. And if I wanted to, I can now hop in here and I can find the main one. Here, we found the main one. And I can add in like, you know, let's add in like a little heart bar, right? So I have one heart. Let me hide my grid. And I have 2, D, D, D. I have 5. Command D to duplicate selection. I'm going to select them all. Shift A. Let's reduce the spacing. And then let's make this into a component. So here we go. We have our heart bar. And let's drop that heart bar right into here. And so like, you know, now we have our little like heart bar. If we want to, because this is actually, you know, it's a copy of this component. So if I make this component a little bit bigger, you know, our heart bar is now bigger. And because our heart bar is now bigger, it's now bigger here. Hopefully that y'all like that. That's kind of cool. I didn't even think that'd work out that well. That actually worked out pretty well. There you go, making those cards bigger, right? So this is the original one, right? This is the bar. Let me make sure I name it properly. Right, and then here it is in the auto layout. So thanks, I appreciate that. All right, so that makes it a little bit bigger. And then if I want to too, right, we're gonna get into variants. So variants, let's say I have this heart bar and like I have like the 5 different stages of hearts. I can select this and I can go over here and choose variants. And what that does is it creates what is known as a component set. So I can actually have 5 different levels of these. So let's go ahead and make 5, right? So I'm here in my variant set. Oh no, where's my little like +1? Let me add in the variant 2. Oh, you know what I should do? Let me select this. I'm actually going to make my variants auto layout. So there you go, 3, 4, 5. 4 and 5. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is basically say, all right, you know, this is fewer hearts. This is 2 hearts. Boom. You know, this is a little bit less than that. Let's say this is that, right? And then we just want to give them all names. So that's 1. This is 2. This is 3. Okay, this is 4. And this last one is 5. So now that our cart is set there, right? Now I can rate, you know, the puppy and the kitten. So here I can actually double click on this object and then I can change, you know, that property. So I can give it 3 hearts. I can give it 5 hearts. And then I can go here and I can change that one from 1 heart to 3 hearts. Actually, I'm gonna give this one 5. They both deserve 5. And what's cool is that that can easily be like swapped out. So it's using and it's basically choosing which one of these variants to choose in that set. So what's really cool is that these could be changed however you want. Like I could even make the colors in the second variant to be a little bit different. So I can make those blue, right? I can make these ones, you know, like a slightly different color. I can make those purple and I can make these, you know, blue. And let's make this one kind of like sad. It's so sad. It's just got the one little heart, right? So they kind of like grow. So then now when I change those properties, I can just say 5, 3, 4. Makes that a little bit more fun to go through. All right, cool. So we only got about a half an hour left. So let's dig into prototyping. I know we got a lot to cover. So very, very quick, when you're prototyping, I'm going to draw a frame and I'm going to create an iPhone 13 frame. So here's my first frame and then I have another frame. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use the pencil tool and I'm going to create almost like a paper prototype, right? So I'm just going to like draw out, you know, I'm like going like super old school. So I'm saying that here's like, you know, there's my button, there's my other button, right? There's some text. I'm holding down the shift key. So use the pencil tool. Yeah, hold down the shift key to make a straight line. Right? And then, so I'll even go like, you know, like little X, and then I can move that over. Right, so let's say if I just want to make like a simple prototype, paper prototype, right? So this is like, right? This would be like a whole thing. And then let's say there's a little dialogue modal here or something, right? Boom, boom, boom. All right, so let's say if I click on, you know, like a button here, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select all that. I'm just going to group that, and then I'm going to select all this, and I'm going to group this. I know this is like so terrible. And let's bring this down, and let's make a little rectangle there, and make that like, all right, cool. So I have like 3 frames, right? Let's say that I want this button, you know, and by the way, if I have my button up here, right, I can totally just now right click and say paste or replace. And I have a copy of my button. And if I press the K key, right, the K key, it's up here. The K key will actually let me scale that down. So I'll just say, you know, see button 1. And then once again, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to select this. I'm going to right click and say paste or replace. And then I got button 2, right? So we have button 1 and button 2. Let me auto layout those. And I'm going to have this one go to this frame. and I'm going to have the second one go to the second frame. So I'm going to go to prototype mode. We have a new shortcut key for prototype mode. So if you press Shift E, it'll toggle between design and prototype mode. So if you look on the right side of the screen, I'm now in prototype mode. So what I can do is I can go to this first button, and then there's a little plus that you'll see there on my screen if you're watching. And I could drag that over to frame 9, and then here I get all the interaction details. So here what I'm going to do is I'll just say on click, I'm going to navigate to frame 9, and let's use a very simple interaction. I'm going to use a move in interaction so I can actually see what that looks like here. So I'm going to move in. I'm going to choose the ease in out interaction that's a little bit more custom, and I actually have a little presentation embedded in this file if you want to preview it. But this is an ease in, ease out interaction that I'm going to employ here, right? So ease in, out, I'm going to about 300 milliseconds, and I'm going to do the same thing for this one. And you'll see that my properties are now the same. So let's just try that out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this whole frame here and have it go back. On click, navigate to, it's going to go back to frame 9. And then same thing here, I'm going to have that go back, right? And if we want to, we can move these around, and I can see those noodles, right? So this noodle goes there, this noodle goes there. I can kind of visually map how this is working. So let's say I put this over there and this over here, right? And if we start to visually map that, right, let's think about ourselves in our UX hats, right? If I'm actually going to the left, maybe I want, my content to move in from the left, right? So it's going to move in from the left. And if I'm going to navigate to the right, maybe I want my content to move in from the right. So, okay, cool. So this button's going to bring that in. This one's going to bring it in that way. And let's give it a name. So, say simple prototype. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And now you can have multiple prototypes on your frame on your page at the same time, which is pretty cool. So I'm in my prototype mode. I'm going to change this to scale down or up. And then if I hit button 1, it goes there. Then I go back, and I go to button 2, and it's there. Then I go back. So that's like absolute simple. We can begin to kind of grow this by changing these values up a little bit. So instead of move in, maybe I do push, right? And then instead of here, same thing. Instead of move in, maybe I do push. And then when we're going back, let's think about it, right? Let's push, going back. And then this one, the same thing, right? Let's say this one, we're going to push, and then we're going to go back. So just to try out those different interaction types to see if cognitively, right, the user understands, where we're going when we pull up the next frame. So let's go scale out to fill. So there you go, boop, boop, right? And you saw that. Right? So I click there, and then I click, and then it went again that way. That's actually not good UX, because in our minds, right, spatially, that first frame is over here. We don't then want it to come from the left again. So let's fix that, right? So let's take a look, right? Right now, we're pushing, right? It's going to the right, which makes sense. But let's take a look at this one. We're pushing, but is it going in the correct direction? Maybe we actually want to push in the opposite direction because we want to show where our original frame came from. Same thing with this. Let's make sure that the way that our screen is pushing is going in the correct direction. And same thing here. There we go. So then now when we hit play, it should make a little bit more cognitive sense for the user. So let's scale that down to fit. Button 2 goes there. Boom, we're back. Button 1. And we're back. And then now the prototype makes more sense. So when you're prototyping, think about how you're cognitively placing things. So that is a very simple prototype using some of those built-in screens that have, we're going from like completely different screen to completely different screen. But we want to start thinking about like a smoother prototype. We want to have like a little bit more fun in how things are generated. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring down some of our content here. Right, I'm gonna create another frame. Let's make that frame, also let's just keep it on the iPhone train going. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna scale these down. I'm gonna hit the K key. Let's scale these down so they're gonna like fit our frame here. Now, the one thing you always want to do is you want to make sure you preview these things on a device using like the iPhone, app. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm actually gonna have like a few more. If I need to see more, I can unclip the content from my frame, and I can select those and I can move these down. I just need to make sure that, they're all, basically like, in my frame. So if I hit click content, you'll see the rest kind of like hide. I can select that frame, and when I go into prototype, I can say vertical scrolling, and then we can clip it. And what I'm going to do here is just add another. Where is it? Oh, prototype mode. Here we go. What I'm going to do is just add another starting point, right? So I have a second one. So I'm just going to call it, like fur baby scroll. Let's go here, rename that. Oh, it's not letting me rename it. Let me go here. Can I rename it? Yeah, fur baby scroll. Now, one cool thing is I can actually change the order of my prototypes here in the way that I want to play them. But let's check out fur baby scroll. Let's hit play. Oh, let's actually set it in our device. All right, cool. So that'll actually be set in our device. It's not playing that one. I might have to log a bug. But here we go. Gonna hit play. And then we go to fur baby scroll, and then here we go, and then we can see that they scroll. So just simply by having those objects expand beyond the frame and then setting the frame to be scrollable, it gives us the opportunity to kind of like demonstrate how that works there. So what we can do here too is begin to think about how we can kind of like make this a little bit more interactive still. So what I'm gonna do is here, I'm going to make an interactive component. Okay? So here we have the main component, right? These are still kind of like iterations of it. So here I have this component, and what I'm going to do with these, right, is I'm going to select them all, right? So they're all selected. I'm going to put them in an auto layout frame. So now I can actually space them out. And what I'm going to do here with this main component is I'm going to create a variant, right? So now I have two of them. I'm going to press Shift A and then put them to the right. Let's give a little bit of space, right? So here I have this variant, and what I'm going to do with this second one is I'm going to expand the height, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it so when I click on this, it's going to expand the height. Cool. Hopefully y'all are with me there. So this is now going to be an interactive component. So here, when I go to prototype, I'm going to have this. So on tap, change to, it's going to go to this next one. And then let's have that smart animate. So what that's going to do, it's going to take a look at all those properties. Since everything is like named the same, it's just going to expand out. So what I'm going to do now is let's just make sure that this, let's go to the main component, right? It's still there. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate you. All right, cool. So now let's go ahead, let's hit play. So watch this. Boom. Oh, I actually didn't do that good of a job, but it's okay. We could expand them all. So now when I click on these, right, they all expand. And then let's say when I click on this again, right, we'll have it go back, right? So on tap, change to, let's have it go back to the original one. And then if I want to, let's say I swap that image. So Command Shift K, I'm iterating, I'm riffing, I'm prototyping, right? So let's drop in a different image there, and then let's hit play. So here, boop, 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 boop. So what we did was we took our component and then we made it interactive, right? And we can actually change some of these other properties as well. So like, let's say if I want, that name to go blue, right? Then it'll also go blue. But what it'll actually do is it carries over all of the overrides to that second frame. So like, let's say, if at this larger state, right, like let's say when you're viewing the full size, you actually want to, hide all of that detail, right? So it's only going to be that part of the card. So let's riff and then see how that works now. So let's go to prototype and hit play. So there we go. So you see how that works? So it's like expanding, right? It's going beyond that content and still filling that space. Because what I did was I hid the content in that second frame. So it changes how it behaves. Now, if you want to like a slower interaction, you can just increase the duration between that. Or like right here, let's say if I want it to be like a little bit more slowed out, I can change that. So it'll happen a little bit more abruptly in the beginning and then kind of slow down. So let's give that a try. Let's do that going back as well, right? So there we go. So then it slows down. So I'm gonna hit play. So in Figma, it's all about iterating and testing your ideas and changing the properties and seeing what looks best. So there, it looks a little bit more natural when I expand it. Cool. Are there any questions? Let's see. The different scenarios where you could use auto layout. Hopefully I've been demonstrating that, a bunch of different scenarios where you can use auto layout. Some really cool plugin suggestions for Figma. In terms of plugins, I try not to use too many plugins. There is one plugin, it's called Figma Finder. I love Figma Finder because it lets you find like anything in your file and then like target it out. So like if I was to type in fur, baby, oh, maybe it's not going to find, oh, because it doesn't have a name. So let's say MIGS, right? So I can actually find any component or anything I'm looking for. So it actually tells me that there are 4 here, and it'll help me find that. So Figma Finder, I think, is one of my favorite plugins. There's another one too called Styler. I don't think I have Styler installed on this account. But Figma Finder is definitely my favorite. There's, let's see, another one that I'm starting to use called Tricycle or Automator. And I don't know if I have it installed here, so I don't know if I'll be able to demo it. I won't be able to demo it because I don't have it installed on this account. But Automator is really cool by Jordan Singer. It actually is like a stack of actions that you can use to perform things in Figma. So here, let's try another easy prototype. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a frame. And I'm gonna draw a circle, and I want y'all to like try to make easy prototypes so you can get the sense of how Figma works. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a simple kind of like tap, open, and close, right? So what I'm going to do here is let's say I'm going to change this color. So let's say I have it red to, let's say, purple. And so when I tap this, right, it's going to smart animate. Now what smart animate does is it looks at the layers in one frame and looks at the layers in the next frame, and it's trying to make sure that it's applying a tween. So it's changing the properties between those 2 frames. So here the property change would be the color and the size. So when I go ahead and apply this, right, let's do my favorite ease in, ease out. Right, so navigate to, it's going to smart animate. Then we can also kind of go back, right? Animate to smart animate. We hit play on that. So you'll see that very, very quickly. And then also, like, let's say, oh, I don't want that frame anymore. So I'm going to change from the iPhone 13 Pro Max to just presentation. Let's give that a shot, so we can see, the way that it looks. Let's go to flow 1. So all of my prototypes are over here on the left, by the way. And so now, boop, 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 right? I got a sense for how the smart animate is working. So one thing that I like to try, which is kind of fun, is to add animated GIFs. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see if I have one on my desktop. I'm going to drop an animated GIF there. Let's see. Let's find a fun one if I have one. All right. That one's funny. All right, cool. So let's see. Trying to find a. Let's go to Giphy. Giphy. Been surprise. And here we go. Oh, let's see. All right, so let's grab this one. Let's go to share. Let's find the original. Let's copy the GIF link. Let's download that GIF. All right, cool. And I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to drop that GIF onto this stage, and I'm going to grab its fill. So I'm going to copy the fill, and I'm going to paste it there. Right. So now the way that this is going to work is when I prototype it, it's going to go from that red fill to this animated GIF fill. So animated GIFs are really helpful, like when you have, oh, there we go, the surprise. So animated GIFs are like really helpful, like if you have something that's like pre-recorded that like, you know, you want to have as be part of your demo, or if you're including like video as part of your prototype, animated GIFs are a great way to go. My favorite animated GIF encoder is going to be GIFSKI. So it's GIFSKI right there. That's my favorite animated GIF encoder. So basically it'll take any MP4 file and convert it into an animated GIF. And you should be able to click on that and open that link up. So it's an open source one. You can actually download it from the Mac App Store, or you can like run it off of the site. All right, how are we doing on time? So I have 10 minutes left. All right, so lastly, I'm just going to show you something with interactive components. I'm going to head over to my prototype window and actually bring this over so y'all can see. This is an example that I made for interactive components playground file. If you look in this file over here on the left in the pages, right? By the way, you should be able to duplicate. I think you should be able to duplicate this file into your drafts. If you're unable to do so, please let me know. But here, if you look at my pages, I have a number of different prototypes here. In here, I have a whole presentation on how easing works. So just kind of like a little bit of an explainer, so you can kind of go through it, learn about tweens, the different types of eases, and how to control them in Figma with examples here. So you can kind of like see like how ease in works, you know, how ease out works. Linear motion is good for anything that's constant. You know, ease in, out for like, you know, moving items that are within the interface. And then ease in, out, back for like a little bit of personality. So ease in, out, back for like a little bit of personality there. So this is all within that file. So you can go through and kind of preview that. You should have view access. And then here, this is the interactive components playground file. This is actually available on Figma community. So anybody can go here and download it. And then this is the tic-tac-toe example that I'm talking about. So the way that this works is this is a pretty complex interaction, and what I do is I have it spatially kind of set where, you know, this first item, while you hover over it, it brings up this object here. It switches the state to this one. And then here, this has an interaction for when you click on the X, then it goes and starts down this path. Then this one, when you click on the O, it goes down this path. So the way that that works, actually, I'm going to just draw out another frame so you can see this kind of like isolated on its own, right? So I'm going to paste just that. I'm going to paste just this frame, right? So it's like the second variant. I got to get out of prototype mode. The undo. There we go. So, oh no, I keep hitting the wrong shortcut key. My bad. There we go. So just so y'all can see how this this kind of works and interacts with each other. So I'm just pasting some of the individual ones here, and then if I add this as a starting point, and I hit play on this frame, the way that this works is you can see like all the different interactions. So here, when I hover, when I unhover, right, and then when I click, goes there, and then when I click, it goes back. So see this one, it's already there, then this one, so then I can actually go back to all the original states. So let's make a simple one really quick, and then we'll kind of close it out with that. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to draw a frame, and I'm going to have a circle. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have a couple of different states of this circle. So let's say I'm going to have the circle get big, then I'm going to have the circle get small, and then I'm going to have the circle, like, I don't know, like let's just say get really big, or let's say big again, like right there. Okay. So yeah, let's make that like, let's say small, big, and then really small again. Okay, so right now I didn't even name any of these. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select them all. I'm going to hit Command R or Control R, and it's going to allow me to rename them all. So I'm going to call this, circle interaction. And then I'm going to number these out. So these are all going to have numbers. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So Command R allows you to batch rename things. So I'm renamed all of those frames. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change some of those properties. So let's say this one's going to be red. Let's say this one's going to be blue. Let's say this one's going to be that fun little green. And then this original one, is just kind of chill. It's going to be corgi fun. That's what it's going to be. I'm bringing it back to the beginning. It's going to be corgi fun. So you're going to say, hey, Meg, so do I have to go through and then make all of these components and then make it into a variant set? Like, that seems like a lot of steps. So I'm here to say you don't have to do all those steps. I'm going to select them all. I'm going to come up here. It says create component set. So this create component set is going to take all of those frames, convert each one into a component, and then make all of them into a component set. And then boom, there we go. So they're all done. So all we need to do now is create interactions. So here I'm going to, let's say mouse enter. Let's say while hovering. Yeah, no, mouse enter. Let's do mouse enter. So mouse enter is going to go to this one, right? And it's going to smart animate. And then we'll go here and we'll say after delay. So that means like after a little bit. So like, let's say, after, 1 millisecond, it's going to do this. And then let's do this. And let's say after delay 1 millisecond. And then let's have this go back and say after delay, 1 millisecond. So what we're going to do is we're going to hover over, and then it's going to play out the rest of those animations. And what I'm going to do here is create a whole frame. And let's copy this component. And let's have like a whole bunch of them, right? So I'm going to drag that over and hit Command D, 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 right? I'm going to select all these, drag that down, hit Command D, 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 right? And then let's select them all and center them. Get that centered. I don't even know if this is going to work. I'm just riffing on the fly at this point. I'm just having fun. So let's hit play. I don't know if it's going to play that frame. Let's make sure we select this frame as a starting point. Add starting point. Let's hit play and let's check this out. All right, come on. Let's see the multicolor corgi. Yes. So now when I hover over them, right, they're just doing their thing and they're kind of fun. And then they go back. Doop, 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 doop. All right, so that's what I have for today, and hopefully y'all had fun. Let's see if there's any other questions. Could you show how to add images of shape once again? Images of shapes, super simple. Take a shape and polygon, and then Command Shift K, and then just grab an image, and then just drop right onto it. If you have another shape, so let's say an ellipse, I can select this in my design mode, and I can copy it. So I can select over here, copy, and then just paste. Another thing that you can do is you can copy style and paste style. So this one, let's say copy, oops. Select here, copy properties right here. So this Control Command C, I can copy the properties and just paste those properties, and it'll paste that fill. All right. Hopefully y'all enjoyed that. Any questions for me? Question, Q&A. There's a few more in the Figma. Okay, cool. Are parent-child relationships in Figma different from those in object-oriented programming? I mean, it's pretty much the same. I mean, it's like you're nesting objects. I think like with Figma, there might be like one or two things that are going to be like a little bit different, but for the most part, it is the same. Oh my God, I'm loving this. Oh my God, this photo is the best right here. So yeah, it's pretty much the same. Like, I mean, when you're working in Figma, it's like object-oriented programming. You know, you have objects, you have the properties, you can nest objects within it, and they can like inherit certain properties. You know, like rotation and things like that. So it is pretty similar to the way that it would be there. I'm gonna drop some like heart-shaped eyes. Boop. Oh yes, I'm loving the selfie wall. Y'all finally came through with the selfie wall. This is great. And you got the doodles. Oh man, somebody's got me over here. I'm feeling this. That's going on my Twitter. If you want to give yourself some attribution, I'll give you a shout out. All right, and then one last thing, I am using this cool plugin called Flyover in FigJam that allows me to basically make my whole presentation in FigJam. And Flyover also works in Figma as well. So if you're working in Figma, this is another really cool plugin that you can use in your Figma file that'll allow you to kind of like set up areas that you want to visit and go through. Cool. So reset. We thank you, or any other things. Any other questions? I think, do we go till 10:45 or 10:30, Lauren? Do you know? 10:30? Okay, cool. So unless there's any other questions, I'll hand it over to the hosts. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Hosts, are you there?
Yeah, we're there.
I think so.
Like coming.
We are actually like coming out of the session. We are completely involved into it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
There you are.
yeah. We're like completely involved into the file that like we forgot the presentation part and we are the host, organizers.
We literally have no words. I mean,
Exactly.
there is
no
we have
words.
learned so much here, and we kind of used to think we were moderately good in
Yeah.
Figma, and yes, we don't have that notion
Actually,
anymore.
I've been in Figma for maybe a year or so. I was like, okay, there is so much new things for me to learn. But actually, from the beginning to the end, I learned actually everything. I look like a new beginner right now. The Figma, and thank you so much for this wonderful session.
I mean, the way you took it from the basics, I don't think there's anyone here who hasn't gone without learning anything.
And one of the most interactive sessions I've ever been. I mean, I'll put in the topmost tier.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And yeah, we
Yeah.
got your confidence from there.
And if you guess how did Figma's comment come here, this entire presentation is in Figma. It's prototype currently right now.
And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. We are
Really overwhelmed. And thank you so much.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks, Lauren, too, for joining me and supporting me. Thank you, everybody, for following along. And feel free to follow me on Twitter. I give a lot of like insights on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn, Miguel Cardona. In the US, the Secretary of Education has my name, so that's why I've been leaning on Miggy a little bit more. So my SEO, my search engine optimization has got completely destroyed. But I appreciate you all, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share some Figma and FigJam insights.
Thank you.
and thank you for coming for an event at our country, India. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, have a good one. I'm going to sign off. This has
Thank
been
you.
great.
Happy having you. So yeah, so participants,
What do you have
what
to
do you
say?
guys have to say? Actually, are you guys in the same state as we are in, or how is it?
How
Come
much
on.
have you learned?
Yeah,
Just
spam
spam
the
the chat.
chats, or you can unmute and say, "Come on."
We don't have a Figma file to
Yeah,
post all.
post all this.
Just spam the chats.
Yes.
I don't doubt you've learned.
Yeah. Obviously, because even I have learned a lot today. So, anyways, I guess before we come into one more segment, there is one important thing that is from I believe, yeah, within the next few time is for 1 hour, that is from 9 to 10. We are anyways 5 minutes past our initial time. So from 9:15 to 10:15, okay, you guys will be having a task time. That is the previous days. That is
You were
UI
given a
challenge.
task,
Yeah.
right? So
So
you
some-
have this time to, sort of get into your teams, kind of figure out what you want to do, and get started.
Yeah.
Do you remember the deadline is
tomorrow
tomorrow,
night,
so
59 p.m. So the reason for this time right now is because most of you guys had send us PMs that saying you guys had offline classes. So that is the reason we're giving you this time, so you could spend this time to do that particular task. And yeah, now there is another part. I guess Nami is carrying on.
there's a specific thing that we've got to kind of tell you guys. You guys remember the surprise, right?
Yeah, the surprise.
So we're going to be talking about that, but not exactly talking about that. The first thing we'd like you guys to do is check your mails.
Yeah.
Right now.
Check your mails. Go fast. Check your mails. And spam. What do you guys think in chat? Fast. Yeah, send a mail to you guys.
Okay. Okay. Sus.
Yes.
Yes.
They can't. Okay. Come on. Come on. I believe everyone has received a mail.
Please do check it. And then
Yeah.
just
Spam it. What do you guys think?
nothing.
Nothing.
Just
Why? Oh, come on.
no. Don't. Okay.
Name and DOB. So,
I think
yeah,
this
so
should.
by this time the screen, yeah, it's the front of the screen.
I think if you haven't guessed it already, this should kind of give you an idea of
Idea
what
what
is
it is.
coming. So yeah, we're going to kind of end it off on that note and give you this time to work on your task again.
Go Discord, go into the voice chats of your teams and just build the UIs properly with all the contents you guys have learned from today's Megi session.
Yeah.
And that is it. That is Salman Faris and
Nobody famous.
Venu
Thank you
signing
for all
off
this time.
for today. Bye.